Well, hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Extended Cut. We got an awesome episode for you today. We are continuing our series on donkey missions.
Yes, we are.
But before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by
Baptisms.
Baptisms. It's an absolutely amazing thing that we're going to be doing very, very soon here at Hope Valley. We've got a whole bunch of people that have already signed up to get baptized. Baptism's like such an amazing thing because it's this outward expression of this inward change and this declaration that we're following Jesus. So yeah, super duper excited about it.
I just had a thought about baptism. I think sometimes we're always trying to figure out, what do I need to do to be saved? Like, what do I need? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And it's like salvation comes by faith through grace. And so it's like, well, just believe, like agree with what God has done for you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of inverted. It's like, I want to do something to get saved. No, Jesus did that to save you.
Already, yeah.
And now that you are saved, you get to do something.
Exactly.
And now that you have been saved by Jesus, you get to get baptized, right? You get to be immersed into the presence of Jesus in a very real way and experience the kind of a physical manifestation, like you said, a physical experience and representation of that death, burial, and resurrection.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like inverted. We look for the thing to do on the front end.
Yeah.
He's like, no. You're saved by Jesus because of what He did on the front end.
Exactly.
Now we get to respond. We get to do something. On the back end, not on the front end.
Yeah, and I love what you were saying. It's not something that we've done. We can't save ourselves. Jesus actually did it. He's like, hey, it's done now. Let's do something.
The best example I've seen of not being able to save ourselves, it's like it's physically impossible to pick yourself up.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? You can pull yourself up,
but you can't
you
actually physically
pick yourself up. No matter how, the strongest man in the world cannot pick himself up.
Yeah.
So, but in that same way, we can't save ourselves.
No, I love it. And just
that's not what we're talking about today.
It's really not. And just so you all know the way my brain worked, I was trying to figure out ways that I could do. I was like, challenge accepted.
You can try that. You pull away.
I know, right? So baptisms, it's absolutely amazing. If you've never been baptized and that's something that you're interested about, feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to talk to you about it. It's an absolutely amazing thing. So let's dive right into our episode, shall we? So PD, donkey missions, and our excuses. This is getting juicy. So talk to us about it. Talk to us. What were your main points? What was the idea that you wanted to get across?
Yeah. So, two things. Actually three. One thing, and then I'll answer your question. I did comment that I was going to say donkey a lot of times. My son ended up counting 33 times I said the word donkey. Yes. And I'm wondering if I could have not said it some of those times, but it's just what happened. And it is what it is.
There's a video coming out with all of the times that he said it, by the way. That's happening.
He was working on that.
So stay tuned for our YouTube shorts.
So in terms of what we were trying to talk about is across the whole series, we're talking about how the donkey missions, these kind of senseless moments that we find ourselves in, or these kind of detours that we don't like, where we're confused or bewildered by the moment, we're just mad about it. It's really not about finding the donkeys. It's not about Saul finding the donkeys in 1 Samuel chapter 9. It was about what God wanted. It was about God positioning him to have an encounter with his ultimate purpose. Yeah. And sometimes in life, the things that seem to be an aside from what we want to be happening or what we ultimately think should be happening is really just a setup so that we'll be in the right place so that it can happen. Yeah. In terms of, so week one, we talked about how it reveals the inner donkey, our bad attitudes, our difficulty, everything else. And that was less Saul's problem and more like what that reveals in us. Week two, we talked about our present past and how we can get so tied into what used to be or what we think is that when God presents an alternative, we can't even see it. Because we're so stuck in the weeds. And then when we talked about excuses this week, we see Saul in verses 5 through 8. Saul's like not finding the donkeys. He's been through these places and he's looked everywhere he can think to look. And he's like, let's just go home. He's like, my dad's going to start worrying about us instead of the donkeys. Let's just quit. And his servant goes, no, wait. Like, there's this man of God that we could go see, this prophet, this seer, and maybe he'll have insight for me. And he's like, well, we really don't have anything like to give him, to get this encouragement, to get this word from him. And so he didn't, it makes me believe that he likely isn't concerned with his dad or he would have said, no, dude, I told you my dad's going to be upset. Let's go.
Yeah.
Instead, he changes and he's like, no, we don't have anything. So these excuses are coming up because he wants to be done with the donkey mission. And the reality is most of us want to be done with our donkey mission.
You're not wrong.
And so Saul finds himself trying to avoid both the work and the encounter. So we see this work through. Now, this coming week, Pastor Andrew's going to minister on the people in our lives and the role that the father, the servant, and Samuel played in making sense of the donkey season, or in sending him on the donkey season, making
sense of the donkey season.
Moving him on, and So like all that's going to happen. But this week was really about recognizing that the donkey seasons are used to reveal the excuses that get in the way of us having an encounter with God that changes everything for us.
Yeah.
And for the difficulty is that an excuse and a reason look so much they look exactly the same on the surface. An excuse and a reason.
Yeah.
The difference being that I offered on Sunday was that an excuse is the primary goal of an excuse is self-preservation instead of actual logical reasoning and something that makes sense. So
that's good. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
You mentioned something on Sunday that I would love for you to just kind of delve deeper into. You talked about a scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Like this aspect of, you even mentioned a study with farmers, that two farmers with the same resources, you tell one of them that they don't have enough, their IQ goes down.
Yeah.
Right? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was part of the idea that what's the kind of the origin or the birth of excuses?
Yeah.
And I believe excuses start to appear when we have when our pride is threatened, when our fear is not realized, but when we have fear, and when fear begins to own the narrative of the moment.
Yeah.
Right, like you'll never make it, you'll never survive, right? Like those kinds of things, or your life is going to be ruined by this, or you're going to be humiliated. And then the third thing is a scarcity mindset, and that showed up with Saul. Like he was offered this opportunity to go have this encounter with this man of God who could make sense of the moment, and he said, "But I don't have anything to give him."
Wow.
And the whole journey is about Saul not having enough, right? Like it's about him not having.
Yeah.
So he goes on this journey because he doesn't have the donkey. So he looks for the donkeys, and they go through Ephraim, which means place of double blessing. And in a place of double blessing, he had nothing. And then they run out of food, and so he has nothing. And then they're going to go see this man of God, and he has nothing. And so I think it was just as much about the panic of not having enough that had him wanting to quit on the donkey mission as it was any other reason, pride or fear or whatever else. But a scarcity mindset, you mentioned that one study. The other study that I mentioned on Sunday was the study by University of Minnesota, where they basically withheld food from one group of people and they fed well another group of people. And the group that was not fed well began to orient their whole lives around food, like to an obsessive degree, because there was a scarcity mindset kicked in, and it basically gave them tunnel vision to think about what they didn't have instead of being able to understand what was available to them. Even when there were other solutions available to them, all they could be was consumed with what they lacked. And I think about my own life and how easy it is to get into that place. Where it's like I'm consumed by the ideas of what I don't have instead of taking stock of what I do have. In Genesis or in Exodus, Moses is going to go before Pharaoh, and he's kind of arguing with God as they do, and as we do as well. And he's like, I've got nothing, and God's like, what's in your hand? And he's like, a staff, right?
And I still have nothing.
I've got a staff and I've got nothing. That's great. And God ends up using that staff twice. It turns it into a serpent and buds the staff that has been dead. And so it's which neither of those things make any natural sense, but it's what God chose to do with what was in his hand. And in the story in 1 Samuel with Saul and his servant, the servant ends up pulling out 50 cents. Like a sliver of silver. So he has a splinter of value. And he goes, we do have something. We've got this sliver, like he's like, I have this.
Yeah.
Let's just try. And it was more than enough for the moment.
Wow.
And so the scarcity mindset is really, it's really when we get locked up on what we don't have and we have a difficult time understanding and appreciating what we do have or what is available to us. And I mean, ultimately, I think the antidote per se, like is, I argued on Sunday that it's faith, but specifically as it relates to a scarcity mindset, it's gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
Like Saul maybe didn't have the money that he thought he needed to talk to the prophet.
Yeah.
He didn't have the food that they thought they needed for that moment.
Yeah.
But he had the servant with him. And he didn't have a very good understanding, like, man, that's sliver of silver. And I think sometimes the sliver of silver in our life is more than enough to accomplish what needs to get done. And we need to lead with gratitude.
Yeah.
When Jesus fed the multitude, right? Like he took the bread and gave thanks.
Yeah.
Right? He blessed it and he gave thanks. And it's like, he's like, thank you for this. That is not enough for the task. And in giving thanks for it, it became more than enough for the task.
Wow. Yeah. That's good. And I think the other thing too, and I just want to clarify for everybody listening, a scarcity mindset doesn't just qualify resources.
Yeah.
It could be time. It could be.
That's so good.
It could be so many different things, and it
really
affects us so deeply. So I think the idea of having gratitude for it and leading with gratitude, it's like, man, I do have this time. I can do this. Oh, I might not have this other thing.
Exactly. A talent.
Yeah. Exactly.
An ability. It's like, oh man, I'm not as good as blank. And it's like, well, how good are you? Use the heck out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So like, just use what you have to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you brought up the loaves and the fishes, because they used the best of what they had to their greatest ability.
Yeah.
But then God stepped in and it's just like, okay, now watch this.
Yeah.
Did you forget who I was? Did you forget that this really isn't just about you? Did you forget that I'm with you? Did you forget that I'm standing with you and I've called you to this, and this is something that if I want it done, I'm gonna get it done.
So good.
And I mean, in my own life, that's kind of the narrative. It's just like, I feel like I don't have enough, or do this, or I'm not a good enough, insert whatever the thing is here. And I always have the reminder to be grateful for the gifts that I do have and the skill set that I do have. And remember that God blesses an effort that he's called us to. And he doesn't leave us in it.
Man, I want to double click on that idea that about how we respond to that. I think maybe we would all benefit from being a little more charismatic. Right? Like, I know that there are problems with the prosperity gospel. But the idea, one of the undergirding thoughts in that area is that God has more than enough, and he's going to share it with his people. Because as children of God, we have inheritance from him.
And he gives good gifts.
Right? He gives good gifts to his children. And that is absolutely true. And I think sometimes in trying to avoid a prosperity gospel, we actually reject the gift of God. And we miss out on our Father's provision. And so while we might not have enough, even maybe my talent isn't enough, or my skill isn't enough, or whatever's not enough, having enough faith to believe that God has enough. That while we have limitations, we serve a God who has no limitations. And so you think about revivals started by the most unlikely of people. It's not because they had enough. It's because God is more than enough.
Exactly.
You think about people who are healed of sickness or disease. It's not because they had enough. It's because God had more than enough. And so I think there's a place when we've given thanks, also maybe as a part of that, giving thanks that, maybe even acknowledging, like, God, I thank you for this. I don't know how you're going to do it. I need you to bless it, but I believe that you're a God of more than enough. And so I have an expectation that we're going to come through on the other side.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's so good. And I think, we just look at evangelism. We look at all of the aspects and these things. We came here to start a church. It's just like, did we really have enough? Probably not. But God's gotten us to the thing. We were talking the other day that the church used to fit in your living room. And we've gotten to this amazing place, but that's really all through him. So he blessed it. He breathed into it, and all we got to do was go along for the ride. So
that's so good. That's so good. And sometimes, so one more thought. About is, I think that it happened in the church plant. It happens in my finances. It happens in kind of every area of life, that when we give thanks to God, really what we're doing, and we express gratitude and we recognize that He has more than enough, we're really offering it back to Him, and we're saying, hey, I need a miracle. You're the only one who can do it.
Yeah.
And then what very often happens is God reorders the stuff that you do have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There have been seasons where scarcity mindset related to money, and it's like, God, we don't have enough. This is all we've got.
Yeah.
Is a sliver of silver. This is all we've got is a stupid staff. Like, I've got a stick in my hand. Like, what are we actually going to do?
Yeah.
And we've had God, Megan and I have had God reorder our financial priorities, and it turned out it was actually enough.
Yeah.
Right. It was actually enough. It just, I had to eat rice and beans for a season.
Yeah.
It was more than enough, but I was going to be rocking the ramen, right?
It's real.
It was
Totally
like,
real.
but it was more than enough. It just, I had to reorder my priorities and reorder my heart towards what He had given me, and then I was able to delight in what He was doing in a moment.
Yeah, and I love that you acknowledge that in that season you were eating ramen. You were eating rice and beans, and it's just like, and I think that's why oftentimes we avoid the prosperity gospel, because like, oh, we're going to be rich. It's like, no, God's going to give you enough. You might have to do some things differently. You might not necessarily get all of the things you want, quote unquote. Like you'll have the provision. You're not eating steaks for breakfast, steaks for lunch, and steaks for dinner though. So I love that in heaven. Oh, yes. Yes, I love it. I'm so excited. That's going to be a good steak.
I know I deeply offended somebody just now.
Okay, let's move on.
I'm sorry, and you're welcome.
Okay.
They're like, this podcast is my donkey mission.
I know, right? That's really fun. It could be, but God's going to do something with it, so it's okay.
He will.
He'll meet you in it. So you said something else as well too that I really liked. You were talking about, I forget what the guy's name was, and you even acknowledged that it might not even be a true story, but the gold miner.
Are you something?
Yeah.
And what makes me think
that sounds like a fake name, man.
Like, are you? It's like, I feel like it's asking the question, are you, whatever, are you Boyd or something like that? The miner.
So basically, he goes, he digs, all the situation's right. This place has got gold. Everything is pointing to that.
Yeah.
And then he's doing his thing. He's digging, and then he's like, you know what, man, this is too much. I gotta stop. I'm giving up.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in, looks at all the same stuff that he's looked at, and is like, oh no, there has to be gold here. Like mathematically, it's there.
Yeah.
And then he just dug 3 feet deeper, and it was like the richest
place.
in the exact same place, and it was like the richest,
all the riches,
gold mine ever in history or whatever.
Yeah.
But you talked about the thing that stops us from continuing to dig, and that's not having a vision that's big enough.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
That wasn't
more?
even in my notes.
So I was
like, oh man.
Yeah.
So
well, it was. I felt the same way as you're saying. I was like, oh, whoa, that's good. Yeah.
So I talked about how I think part of the reason that Saul was willing to give up on the adventure on the donkey mission is because he didn't have a vision of his own for it.
Yeah.
Like, he was faithfully doing what his dad had called him to do.
Yeah.
And he did it faithfully. Like, props to him. Yeah. Good for Saul. His dad said go, and he went. And he went the next day. He went early. He went obediently. But then when he encountered enough difficulty, he withdrew from the mission.
Yeah.
Or tried to withdraw. But the servant kind of kept him in it.
Yeah.
When I think very often, I think maybe all the time, if we don't have a vision for something, when we encounter difficulty, we're going to withdraw at the first sign of lack of progress. Yeah. I mean, anything from, in a very practical, like in normal life stuff, but also related to our belief and our relationship with God.
Yeah.
Right, which is actually normal life stuff too. I don't know why there actually is not a separation between them. So maybe with the secular things and the sacred things, we can have the same mindset. So in kind of like, if I'm trying to lose weight, but I'm trying to lose weight because somebody else said it would be a good idea. Or like my doctor says, hey, you need to lose 10 pounds. And it's like, okay, great. I need to lose 10 pounds. Thank you, doctor.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's not, when I drive by that gelato shop, right?
Or like, you know what?
I could, or like that Mexican restaurant, and I'm jonesing for some nachos, and I'm
I don't mind the 10 pounds. It's okay.
Yeah, like,
it's all good.
This is all right.
Yeah.
Like, Megan will love me.
Yeah.
Right?
My wife loves me. It's I don't have anything to worry about.
Exactly. I'm already married. I got that on lock.
Exactly. That's real. That's all we're
That's a terrible idea.
It is a terrible idea.
But like, if like the doctor's recommendation is not going to be good enough for me when temptation comes.
Yeah, no, that's real.
Because I'm gonna pound that eject button.
Yeah.
When I think about accomplishing a difficult task, it's a lot easier when it's somebody else's idea to come back empty-handed. Like your kids, like my kid. It's like I'm like, hey, I need you to go find this thing, and they'll go look in the room maybe and come back and be like, oh no, we couldn't find it.
Sorry.
Right?
It's like,
because
nope,
it's not important to them yet.
Yeah.
Right? It was important to me, but it's not important to them.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a vision. They don't maybe understand with the significance of the thing they're looking for, how it relates to everything else, but they don't have a vision.
Yeah.
As it relates to the things of God, which is not separate from our normal life, it is our normal life. But there can be ways like I want to pursue God, but maybe I don't see the results that I want fast enough, and so I withdraw. Like
intensity versus consistency.
Yes. And so last week we didn't get to do the podcast last week because I was traveling, but last week I mentioned that we don't yet understand the benefit of the good decisions we're making today.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's good.
Right? Like sometimes we quit on something because we don't realize the compounding effect and the compounding impact of good decisions after good decision after good decision. So maybe somebody tries reading their Bible and they close their Bible and immediately they're tempted, or immediately they get into a fight, or immediately they get fired, or immediately they
feel like they just like, well, I got nothing out of that.
Super discouraged, right?
Yeah.
Like you're disappointed. And so, or you come to church and like you leave and you're like nothing in your life has changed. And so you're like, this obviously did not work.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's not a shot like that changes everything in the moment, but there's compounding. A compounding interest, right, in finances, right? There's compounding benefit as we continue to stay with the people of God, as we continue to build relationship, and as we build a track record of trust and faith and belief in God and see Him moving in our lives. Yeah. But if we don't have a vision for long term, when we don't see the result right away, we'll drop out.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, so I'm at church and I have conflict with somebody because they're sitting in my seat, right? Or like, or like, I don't know what the conflict would be. I'm having conflict because, I see somebody from work and I'm like, man, that person stole, right? Or like that person took something from me. Yeah. Or you see somebody with your ex, right? Like, and you're like, ooh, like let that rise up in your soul. Oh, gosh. Right? So like, so you see a problem and it's like, unless you have a vision for something greater, that level of conflict is gonna take you out of the game because it's just gonna be too hard to overcome. Yeah. Proverbs 29:18 says, "Without a prophetic vision, the people perish or cast off restraint." Yeah. So without having a revelation from the living God about cast off, right? How quickly, right? So the religious one, the King James or something. The way we all memorized it is, without a vision, the people perish. Yeah. But really, when you start getting into it, you realize it's like without a prophetic vision, without divine revelation, people cast off restraint.
Oh, bets are off, or we're just doing whatever. Oh gosh.
Right.
Jeez.
And that causes us to quit early. Yeah. Because there can be victory and freedom and wholeness right on the other side of this conflict. Wow. But if we don't have a vision for wholeness, we've just got a vision for comfort, we might jump out when there's pain.
I can just cast off this restraint and do whatever I want. Nachos taste really good.
Because I want comfort.
Tacos are amazing. Like I'll eat 50 of them. You know what I mean? Wow.
Yeah. Pastor Duke Bendix said growing up, he's like, our conflict with God is that He's interested in our change, but we are interested in our comfort. Right? So that creates this conflict where it's like, I want to be comfortable, and God's like, I want you to change. Yeah. And so He sends us on donkey missions to change us and transform us and reveal these things that stand in the way of us realizing His presence, realizing His provision, realizing His grace, His mercy, and ultimately being called into the things that He wants for us to partner with Him in this world.
Wow, that's good. Man, so in this same vein, just hearing you talking about it, especially the exercise one, I was just like, doctor says you got to lose 10 pounds. You're like, dude, whatever. But, you go to play with your kids and you can't do something. And it's just like, oh, okay. That's that inner gumption is like, no. Yeah. Okay, this actually needs to change now because I want to be able to do this with my kids. I want to be able to run. I want to be able to play. I want to be able to have these experiences with them. Just speaking to that.
Exactly.
would you encourage or suggest people find the vision from God to stay in it, the vision from God to keep going? That I almost want to say conviction, because I had a moment. We had the color fight for youth last week, and I was able to run around and do things, but I felt it. I was just like, oh, the next day I was just like, oh crap, that was geez, I gotta get back to where I was, because if we're really gonna do this and really see, and it was a vision of what we could do. With youth ministry and reaching students and things like that. And it's just like, oh, okay, diet's got to change. I have to get back on my exercise schedule. Okay, this actually has to change now. So how would you suggest people find the vision for the holy things, to say, you know what, no, I need to stay in my word. I need to be in community. I need to be at church on Sunday. I need to get in a small group. I really need this.
I think that's a beautiful question, because like just temporary ideas won't carry us through that difficulty. It's not enough.
It's not.
I think that the hint is in the verse, right? Without a divine revelation, without a prophetic vision. So in the verse, it speaks to the reality that it needs to come from outside of ourselves. And so we need to encounter the divine.
Gotcha.
Right? And now that sounds like really esoteric and kind of ethereal, right? Like just like, woo, encounter the divine. But like we clearly in this context, we're talking about having an encounter with Jesus, having an encounter with the Spirit of God, being embraced by the love of the Father, and embracing His love for ourselves, and drawing close enough to Him to be able to hear His heart and His ideas for our lives more loudly than we hear our own thoughts for our lives. I love that we talk about leaning in a lot, right? We talk about like lean into the punch, like just take it, because on the other side of this, you're stronger and better, and like this is how we win a fight. Sometimes you just got to eat the punch, right? And you taught me that there are other things we lean in for as well, right? Are you the one who said leaning in for a kiss?
You can lean in for a kiss. You can hear a secret.
But it's to hear a secret. And so to receive a divine revelation, it by definition can't come from you. It can't be someone else's idea. Now somebody else might have the word for you. So here we go. Are we ready? Here's the broken record.
Here we go.
You got to get with the people of God and get into the presence of God.
Come on. There it is. I love it.
like get into the presence of God and get with the people of God. And in the presence of God, God will speak to you. And in the presence of God's people, God's promises will be reaffirmed to us. And when we can't hear the promises of God being by ourselves in the presence of God, the people of God can follow through with prophetic utterance and insight and revelation. Because sometimes what you do is you just catch a stray revelation. Like when you're with when you're not wrong. When you're with people and they're talking and they're like they're describing their relationship with God, you get grazed by that.
You're like,
that actually or you can hear two other people, like one person encouraging another person, and it's exactly the encouragement that you needed. And so divine revelation, as much as it does come from God Himself, and we need to steward our opportunity by leaning in and getting into His presence, by reading the Word and by praying and by worshiping. We also need to get around the people of God, because they will affirm what you've already heard, or sometimes be the one to kick it off. But even when somebody else kicks it off, it's our responsibility then to go to God and be like, hey, I heard this. What are you thinking about this? God, they said this. I believe this is from you. What else do I need to know? What else do I need to know about this? And He's always more than pleased to fill in the gaps on those things. If not with revelation, with His person.
No, that's good. And I love the aspect. I mean, because even in my life, there's been times where I've gotten a word from somebody. They're like, that I truly believe this is the word of God. On like for you. But and I'll just throw myself under the bus in this moment. I didn't go to anybody else, or really even with that person speaking to them more about it. And I just kind of ran with it, and it totally derailed me for a little while. I'm like, all right, that's not what they meant. But
We've all done it.
It's like, well, there's that. But that's really good, because continuing to be with God's people and to hear it and get affirmation of it. It's like, because we can go back to the college student or the youth ministry one. It's just like, God told me I'm going to marry you. It's like, no, that's not how that works. And even if he did tell you that, you keep that to yourself for a long time
until they hear it.
Exactly. So I love that aspect of even just hearing it, taking it to somebody just to make sure.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And it's scary, right? It's like to trust people with something that we heard from God, because we like the idea of like, I heard from God, I don't need a priest. And it's not about having a priest. Mm-hmm. It's about inviting the wisdom and the relationship into these places so that it can be affirmed. I had a friend who had a vision of something way before anybody else thought it was a good idea. And so he shared it, and some people like shot it down, shot it down
immediately.
Just immediately. And some people held it gently, and some people just ran with him. And but it was from God, so he had to hold it.
Yeah.
But it was out of season. It was out of season. So the people were like, yes, go, yes, now. They were wrong.
It's not ripe fruit. It's not going to taste good. Don't do it.
Not now. Yeah, right. And then the people who were like, no, never. It's like, well,
nope. You're wrong. It'll get its ripeness. It'll get there.
Yeah. So there was a place where it was like, you know what, like just rest in it.
Yeah.
Just if he said it, it's going to happen.
Wow.
Anyway.
No, that's good.
I love it. I don't know who that's for, but
it's for somebody.
But it's scary.
It's that grazing.
But it's that grazing. Yeah. It's just so scary, right? To these things that are so close to our heart, to offer it to someone else, and that on the off chance, or maybe the likelihood that it'll get shot down, it can be scary, and that's why we got to be wise about the people that we walk with.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not surrounded by yes people. Sometimes I wish I had more yes people.
Gotcha.
Right. Like. It's like sometimes it's like, man, I just wish that it was just all easy and everybody just liked every idea and that every idea worked and that right.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But that wouldn't be a good life. Right? No. The cliff is quite close.
The movie lied. There's a movie with Jim Carrey, Yes Man. He said yes to everything, and his life improved. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
No. So anyway, being wise about the people. So it's not just that people agree with you all the time. It's not that you don't pendulum and find people who disagree with you all the time.
Yeah.
You need people who are going to be willing to agree with you when they agree and disagree when they disagree.
Yeah.
In the wisdom of God, right? And then you decide to love each other in agreement and disagreement.
Yeah.
And those are the people who brought maybe the most value to my life.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's good. It's really good. I know we missed last week, and I think this might have been a little bit more towards last week, but we've been talking about donkey missions. This is week 3 of it. Hypothetically,
yeah,
you're in a donkey season.
Yes.
You know you're in a donkey season.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yes. Yeah, I had a conversation with someone on Sunday about exactly this, and he said, "I realize now I'm in a donkey season. Now what?" Right, because sometimes, I'll say this: you need divine perspective. If you're in a donkey season, you need divine perspective. You can be. Well, I'll say that you need discernment, spiritual discernment, to know what to do. Sometimes when we realize we're in the donkey season, it's about staying in that season and growing to maturity there and letting our character and our faith and our belief be cultivated and developed. And sometimes there's an eject button. We did talk about this, I think, in the sermon, like we quit our jobs too early.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so sometimes we are like, wow, this is a donkey. Like we jump out of the job because there was too much conflict, there was too much difficulty, so we jump out, not realizing it was a donkey season that God wanted us to stay in to develop our character And if he wants to develop our character, he's coming to develop your character in the next job or the next job.
Regardless,
the next job.
he's going to get it.
And if you keep jumping jobs, yeah, exactly. If you keep jumping jobs, he's going to get you in your relationships or your finances or your health.
Yes.
I mean, if he wants to develop you, he's coming for you to develop you in love.
Yeah, it's like that's not a scary thing.
He's going to develop you, like
thing.
not in a threatening bad way. Like we use threatening language because that's our personality, but like he's coming for us to develop us so that we can experience the fullness of relationship with him, and that's a good thing, right? And so I was realizing it sounds so ominous and not exciting to someone.
Yes.
But I like God's vigorous pursuit of me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much knowing that He's coming for me.
Yeah.
Right. That.
After a good fight, man, it's just like, oh gosh, you got me. All right, there you go.
I like
Fair
that.
enough. I appreciate that. That was a good one.
That reckless love Jesus. Yeah. Right. Like there's no mountain like that. More like taking Jesus. Right. Like
bro, it's like
the Liam Neeson Jesus.
I will find you.
Yeah.
And I will.
He's like,
I will save you. I will save you.
It's like,
and I will transform you. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. I'm going to transform your life. And you'll have life everlasting and hope unspeakable and joy unattainable. Like so. Anyway, what were we talking about?
I don't know. I know I need to make that meme of taking Jesus.
Yeah. So. In a donkey season. So I gave this guy the example that sometimes the same donkey season can have two different answers. Mm-hmm. And so I shared with him that I had a donkey season where 3 months in I knew I was in a donkey season 4 weeks in. 3 months in I sought help. Because I like help. Like, do I quit? Like, what do I do in this donkey? Like, what do I do? And they said, no, this is the Spirit of God developing and cultivating your faith. And there was agreement in these people that were speaking into my life. And it was like, God is going to form you through this in a way that you won't be formed otherwise. Stay in it. And so they threw me back. They were like the servant in this case. They threw me back in and they said, stay there. 6 months after that, it was still chaos, still a donkey season, still difficult, still painful. And they came to me and they said, hey, it's time to be done. Same job, same difficulty, same pain.
Same people. Yeah.
Right? Same, everything is the same.
Same God.
But it was, it was time for a new season.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, but through discernment, I think what they saw was that in the beginning, I was being, my life was being cultivated. And at the end, I was no longer, it wasn't about dying to self anymore. It was like I was wasting away. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was in this kind of locked in mode. I was in this locked in mode where I wasn't going to quit because I was going to let God cultivate me. And actually the guy I was telling this to said, he goes, was it your pride? He goes, is it that your pride that you wouldn't quit?
Yeah.
And I 15 years after the fact, I had this revelation. Like I'm trying to help this guy see how it can be different. And he helped make sense of a season I lived 15 years ago that I wasn't going to quit because of my pride. So where I thought the donkey season was so even leaving that work was the death of pride. Yeah. Because I had to resign something I wasn't successful at.
Wow.
And so at the beginning, it was God wants to put things into you.
Yeah.
And at the end, through prophetic discernment, these guys were like, hey, it's time for this season to end. And God was going to take something out of me.
Wow.
Right. So you're in a donkey season, you need discernment. And so you need to pray and ask God, like, what do I do in this donkey? Are you calling me to stay in this donkey season? Or are you calling me to exit the donkey season? And having other people who can help you to make that have that discernment and make those decisions. It becomes more and more important as the stakes of our lives grow and grow.
Wow.
Right. So if you're in high school and you're like, should I take AP Chem or it's like just it's not that serious. Like let's pray about it. I think God cares about it.
He does.
And it doesn't not matter. It doesn't not matter. But you're not going to live and die on that. The stakes for that decision are fairly low. Yeah. And even still, God cares about it. But as things grow, it's like, if somebody has kids, if somebody is in, marriage or heading towards marriage, the weight of the decisions that we make increases. And so, not that God cares any more about it, but we should care more.
Yeah.
about the impact of the decisions we make.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
That's really good.
That was a fun question.
That was a fun question. That was my last one.
That was like, I mean, yeah, that was helpful for my own. That was helpful for my own soul.
I'm glad. That's why I love doing this so much. Yeah.
So this week is Pastor Andrew's going to be preaching.
I know he's going to be preaching this week, so it'll be myself and Pastor Andrew next week on Extended Cut. That's going to be a fun episode. It might look a little bit different than this room, but we'll get that sorted out. We haven't quite figured out that part out yet, but we will get there. But family, thank you guys for joining us today. This is always a pleasure for us, and we hope that it gives some semblance of fulfillment to you all and really pointing you to Jesus. It's not about me. It's not about Pastor David. Our heart and our goal is to point you to Jesus because we truly believe he changes everything and that everyone should learn to know, trust, and follow him. But we will see you guys on the next Extended Cut. Don't forget to watch the sermon. You can watch it here on YouTube or the podcast, whichever one you are listening to and or watching this from. But that's all we got, guys.
Love y'all.
Love you.